help women save lives and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. I am Sean Carney, your host and the president of 40 Days for Life. We're having far too much fun given the topic today. We are going to talk about legal challenges and the need for the Institute of Law and Justice, which 40 Days for Life recently announced. And as we have unfortunately a growing number of legal concerns, today we're going to discuss the impetus of what led to the Institute of Law and Justice, the future plans for the Institute, and how this affects you, no matter where you live. And so joining me on this cheerful legal podcast is General Counsel and the lead counsel for the Institute of Law and Justice. Matt, welcome back. We've never had you on the podcast in studio. Is that right?
I think that's right. Yeah, I did one where you were and Steve were in studio. And I was on my camera at home, which actually works pretty well. The cameras are amazing, but this is much better. And of course, we're sitting here in the studio in the former Planned Parenthood and Bryan College Station. So it's also a spiritual thing, right? To be broadcasting life next to a place where they broadcasted death.
It is. And it's weird every time I drive in here because we're out there on the street, and every time I pull in, I'm like, well, I'm going to get arrested.
Yeah, because you were out there on your knees being persecuted, like within 150-degree heat, which is now low in Texas.
Walking up to the door and knocking and saying, let me in, which they let me in, and now. But that would have been the end of me. We would have had a lot of legal issues.
But we would have defended you now with the Institute of Law and Justice.
Yeah, which we didn't have. And I would argue, so let's go back there. I started coming out here in the summer of 2001, just a few weeks before 9/11.
When you were 10?
No, I was 18, so I could vote. We didn't even talk about half the stuff we're talking about now, and I'm not talking about people say, "Oh, the world's so different." Whether it's whatever, late-term abortion, gay marriage, we have all this trans stuff, we have all this. But through that, we've always kind of had our rights and our free speech, and just using our freedoms to come out here. The last thing we'd ever thought about is the DOJ. I mean, I would have,
yeah, they were protecting America.
They were protecting America at that point. They were a little busy back then because of 9/11 and all of that. But we have a lot of these issues. And from the get-go, you've been general counsel now since 2014. So near
like that.
10 years next year.
Yeah, I joined up. My first board meeting was in December of 2012.
Yes.
And then my first official meeting was in January 2013. And and of course, you guys asked me to join the board so you could get free legal work.
Yeah. Not personally, yeah.
Which I was happy to provide. And then, things evolved, and you and the board at that time recognized things were getting complicated, both in America and overseas. I think when I started out, you were at 19 or 20 countries and rapidly jumped up to 53, as I recall, back in 14, 15. And and I was doing a lot of international work. So things evolved, and now it's evolved again, right?
It has. And we're gonna get into this because there were some things, we have worked with great lawyers across the country.
Definitely.
Lawyers never call you back. You're the only one that actually calls back on time, but I understand that they donate their time. But we've worked with great lawyers, and that has worked because the need has been manageable. And the light switch went off and with the overturning of Roe, and all of a sudden our own government was our enemy. We didn't know that. We worked with the DOJ and local law enforcement. We love cops, state law enforcement.
I'm retired law.
You're retired law enforcement. So you get that aspect of it. But, when you go through the 40 Days for Life training, the first thing we tell the leader is call your police station, meet with your police, tell them what you're
Show
doing.
them
Tell
the statement of peace.
Yeah. Look into permits, look into ordinances.
Because we're prayerful, peaceful, and lawful.
Right.
That's in our mission statement.
Right. And we have talked about a lot, and we've talked about it on the podcast, that the election of Donald Trump, which was great for the pro-life movement, despite what some people say, that led to a lot of crazies, because if you're pro-life, you're associated with Donald Trump, and therefore you're an enemy, and you're horrible, and you're terrible, and you're evil. So we saw persecution increase 2017, 18, 19, and then 2020, which was just an insane year for everybody. It started to dwindle away, and then 2022, and then this year, 2023, it's really kind of gone away for the most part, knock on wood. But what switched was the overturning of Roe and the persecution not coming from the nut with the megaphone who lives in his mom's basement, respectively, but our own government and cops asking us questions they never asked us before, the FBI calling us when we never heard from them unless they were concerned for us, not accusatory against us. Is the answer just the DOJ is corrupt because we have a pro-abortion government?
No. Let's go back to 2001, 2004, 2006, when you were on the street, for so many years, I think 13 years, right? In almost every hour this place was open. Nobody was thinking Sean Carney and the Christians out there on their knees are violating the law. They were thinking that Sean Carney and those Christians are exercising their First Amendment rights. And so there was never any target on your back. That's what's really changed. What happened is that either legitimately, partially legitimately, or totally legitimately persecuted groups in this country, historically persecuted groups in this country, disenfranchised, mainly the poor, the people who don't have access, right? Like when you call the airline lady on the phone and she's like, we can't do that, and hangs up on you. And next time you call, you're talking to someone in India, and that's customer service. And you think to yourself, I'm never going to win this battle. You can't fight City Hall, right? Well, so those groups began to rise up in about this time frame. We tend to think of that as a couple of 3 years old, but it's really 2 decades old when those groups started to come up and say, what about me, right? And to take these to the streets. Well, then the government started to think of protests as a problem. They can become disruptive. They can block streets. They may not have permits. They may not follow the law. They may loot. They may riot. They may set things on fire. Of course, 40 Days for Life and the pro-life movement, by and large, was not doing any of these things. There were some kooks out there, just like there are kooky Roman Catholic priests, there are kooky rabbis, there are kooky people in the pro-life, and there are kooky people in the pro-abortion. In any event, and it began to get systemically on the radar screen of federal, state, and local law enforcement, and as it should, right? People marching down your street, breaking the law. So we got swept up into that. The big change was this, and that I appeared with Mark Houck in the weaponization subcommittee of the House Judiciary Committee. You can't the name's really big, and
we're definitely going to get into Mark too.
But that is what changed. And for the first time, the administration of the federal government went on ahead. And this, by the way, happened on state levels as well, with attorney generals, district attorneys, governors, weaponizing law enforcement to go ahead and protect their agenda as opposed to protecting the law and the Constitution and rights. And so, I was on the phone over the last decade, 12 years, with chiefs of police and beat sergeants and first lieutenants, and saying, we're not going to move across the street. I understand that it's a pain for you. I understand but we have and he's like, come on, man, just ask him to move across the street. The shopping mall owner's mad at me. And I
Right.
said, but my job's not to make the shopping mall owner happy.
Who's leasing to an abortion doctor?
You can't enforce what I call the not law. And so what we have seen is that the Biden administration and certain states and governors have done three things, which is they have made up law, they have intentionally misinterpreted law, and they have gotten unjust laws on the books.
Yeah.
And and they're enforcing it, and only against one group.
Yeah. And you know, ever since Roe, what we didn't have at 40 Days for Life is you guys are January 6ers. You know, now that you're out on the street, we didn't see that after January 6th. We didn't see us being like locked into you storm the Capitol because you're pro-life and you're outside. That didn't happen.
That's true. I haven't heard or seen a single allegation, even from the many FBI outreaches. Hey, we'd like to talk to you guys about what? We just,
Right.
we're just talking.
We're just
No,
talking.
we're not.
Right. We're not dating.
We need to.
Yeah.
About what?
The FBI is always wanting to talk to us without a lawyer.
Always without a lawyer, always on a Zoom call, never give us an agenda, won't tell me. We'll let you know when we get there. How about at a coffee shop? Like, no, I have coffee with my friends Are you there for my best interest? You know, we actually, to be fair, did have one interview which we consented to because she was respectful.
Absolutely.
And she said, look, here's my mandate. She didn't hide anything from me. And look, if y'all are listening, all I ask is that you tell us what your title is, send us the authorization to interview us, like what you're doing, and an outline of the questions. Like when you get up in the morning and you decided to call our leader in XYZ city, who told you? Who authorized that? Are you able to do it on your own? Are you Merrick Garland? That's fine.
We have a lot of faithful FBI podcast listeners, as you know. So.
And I'm against our constituency, Sean, just to tell you right now. I don't believe in some sort of conspiracy undercurrent of hatred. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite.
I think we have great men and women in the FBI.
The tail's wagging the dog.
And they know what we're complaining about, or any Americans complaining about, way better than we do.
And they hate it.
They hate it. Absolutely.
You're going to see that in Mark Houck when those guys who refused to go on that raid didn't want to go in that house and were like, this is just wrong. I'm not doing this. You'll see. The vast majority of people, just like in this country, are going along with this ridiculous agenda, you name it, out of fear, which is exactly what the devil wants. We're afraid to lose what we have. And that is why weaponizing the government, because, you know, when they didn't just arrest Mark Houck at gunpoint with the SWAT team that they deny they have and all that, whether you call it an emergency response team or whatever, armed men with guns against a peaceful guy without any weapons and children. They didn't just arrest him. They offered him a plea deal with no time to serve.
So it went from 11 years
to nothing. And it just twists that arm. But by the grace of God, he said, but I'm not guilty. And the jury's going to...
He could have. I mean, but he did that on behalf of the pro-life movement. And let's just get into that, because we launched the Institute of Law and Justice because of volume. We have buffer zone issues. We have freedom of speech issues. We have harassment. But one of the big... So we basically expanded our legal arm. It's not Matt and another, part-time attorney.
And me, like, referring it out to
all the great...
Thank you to all the great public interest law firms that helped us.
Right.
And so many other pro-life groups. Right.
But we were overwhelming them. They knew it.
They were telling us that.
And we were overwhelming ourselves. They told us, we just can't handle all of your cases. So we hired multiple full-time attorneys, some from the DOJ, some from Ivy League institutions. So we have an all-star team, and we'll get into that. But one of the big cases that we're doing, obviously, with the Institute is suing the DOJ and representing Mark Houck.
Correct. And let me follow up on something very important that you said. There are many great lawyers out there, and there are many public interest law firms that can handle cases for the pro-life. But Mark Houck and every other 40 Days for Lifer brings with it two clients, them. Those are real people with real jobs, and they need real money, and they eat real milk on their real cereal, right? Nobody knows them better than us. I don't know. I've been doing a lot of campaigns, as you know. I know you've done 10 times, but thousands of hours on the street
Oh,
in
yeah.
hundreds of campaigns. That's just you and me visiting, but they have tens of thousands of hours. These are real people, and we get that. Nobody gets that. I'm not saying the other don't, but they're not 40 Days for Lifers. We have to educate them. No, that's not how it works. This is how we do this.
And we saw that. We saw that. And it's not the outside counsel's fault. It's just these are our own people.
Any lawyer has to become a mini expert in what you do.
Right.
But if they're your inside counsel and at your board meetings and out there on the street and we got shiny spots and holes in our knees from praying with next to you too. We just had our symposium. I like to say when I was a corporate lawyer, I went around the country and people shook my hand. They knew there was a need for me and they were appreciative. Now they hug me and they're glad, right? Because we do this pro bono. We do this through the grace of the donors. We don't charge any money when Mark Houck gets arrested, when a great iconic leaders in San Antonio or Lawndale, California, or Seattle, Washington.
And the volunteers certainly see the need for it, but our donors are our volunteers. We don't have like people that sit off and are like, look at that cute thing. I would never go out there and pray, but here's $1 million. We don't have those donors.
Although we'll take it.
We will take it. But the donor, the volunteers who are the donors, they got it from the financial perspective, and the donors are supporting it.
That's right. And that's like to take Mark Houck. So Mark's been out there for 15, 20 years.
Since 2007.
Right. The guy that he got in an altercation with, he'd known for, he can tell you, 8, 10 years. I mean, they've been out maybe 12. They'd been out there for a long time.
Bruce Love, who we've mentioned on the podcast, that is his real name, and we'll just leave it
at that. It is his real name. It's not the Caritas Love that we are used to in the Christian movement, but his real name or assumed name is Bruce Love. I don't know.
And let's talk about him, because everybody has a version of this, but Bruce Love, he's that guy. He was that guy that you would just see in the bar, and he drank too much and he's harassing the waitress, and you're like, somebody come and like arrest this guy or something.
Actually, you'd have to ask Mark about that. I've been out to that campaign 3 times that I recall. I don't recall seeing him.
But he's a perpetual jerk. He didn't have a bad day and get mad at Mark.
Yeah, he'd probably say the same thing about Mark. That's what I don't know, and it doesn't matter. But and we can jump right into that. But I just wanted to reiterate: Mark Houck is a real guy, but he also represents the movement. So every one of the clients of 40 Days for Life's project mission, the Institute of Law and Justice, we know that these are warriors. They're not going to plead guilty to something they didn't do. If Planned Parenthood says we trespassed on their property, we hold the truth, right? We may defend that in court, but we're not going to lie and say we didn't if we know we did. But if they say, well, we know you really didn't, but you probably are going to get convicted, and we have 6 witnesses, and sure, they're Planned Parenthood employees or they're paid by the abortion industry, but you just take a plea, $25 fine to a muffler violation.
Right.
No. And that's what we get. Because there's the movement and there's the individual, and both are precious. Both are precious. So you get into this in Philly. There are 2 horrible abortion facilities, and one of them, Mark Houck, has been praying up for years. So he's there. There's this guy, Bruce Love. What I can tell you about all that stuff you said is he's a true believer. This guy, Bruce Love. He's a wearing the vest. He's an escort, or and he's out there, and they get into it sometimes, right? I'll give you an example. There's a pro-life pregnancy center across the street and down the block, and outrageously, two people come out of the abortion facility, cross the street, and go down the block. They're within 10 feet of the pro-life pregnancy center, and Bruce Love comes running over and successfully gets in between Mark and them, and interferes with Mark Houck counseling them to go into the pro-life. First of all, that's a FACE Act violation against Bruce Love. So when you say, is he a jerk? He's certainly passionate, and he ran across the street and did that, but they didn't charge Bruce Love. The Department of Justice didn't follow the FACE Act. They didn't follow their own internal memo, which says the FACE Act, the Freedom of Access to Clinics regarding reproductive health, that includes pro-life. Most people actually have their babies. That includes pro-life. The DOJ didn't do that. The DOJ charged Mark with that. And that jacked Mark's second charge up from 4 to 11 years. So the total. So he was actually looking at 4 years, but there was no altercation. There was no shoving on that one. That was the second one.
Right.
And Mark was looking at 4 years until they used Bruce Love's violation of the law. So this is the way that procedure matters, right? Substance matters. First of all, Mark wasn't guilty of it, Bruce Love was. But how you charge, when you charge, if you charge. And also, please remember.
Which is why the DA in Philly, who's pro-abortion, didn't even bring anything. He's like, this is
Well, we're going to find out what he knew. We're going to find out what he knew and who he was talking to the feds. And because remember, and if you don't remember it, so right after that, this guy, Bruce Love, comes and starts.
The DA throws it out. And then Bruce Love.
Well, Mark, the second incident, 2 incidents charged. A few later, Bruce Love won't leave Mark's kid alone. So he shoves him, and he did shove him, and he shouldn't have done it. And he feels bad about it. But the cops wouldn't charge. So Bruce Love maybe is counseled to go. I don't know how he knows. He goes and gets a private criminal complaint. And never shows up in court. In fact, he's mocking Mark on the street. You have a nice day in court. Mark had to go 4 times. Finally,
he never intended on going.
No, the evidence we're going to find out.
Okay.
So was there someone colluding or telling him to do that? Did they know? Because 5 days later, we get the target letter from the DOJ. You're a target of the FACE Act violation. And then months later, of course, he's charged, despite the fact that we said he's not guilty of it, and we'll turn him in. They did charge him with it, even though he wasn't guilty of it, as the jury determined in under an hour. And they did arrest him at gunpoint, even though we said we'd turn him. You know, when I was DA,
let's go back to the turning in. So you represented Mark from the get-go,
right?
All this,
yeah.
But if I have a lawyer, and the DOJ is coming after me, don't they have to respond to your letter months before saying we represent Mark? They don't have to respond.
No, what they can't do is interview him without me present.
Okay, that's it.
That's right. About the crime. That would be a Fourth Amendment. That'd be a Fifth, Sixth, but also it'd be a Fifth and Sixth Amendment violation. Right.
So why is it a big deal if he offered to turn himself in?
Well, it's
why couldn't they say, yeah, right, we're raiding this guy's house?
They can.
Okay.
And they did. Whether or not that's legal is going to turn on some what the evidence is and why they did that, what the intent was. But here's why. So there were approximately 12 to 20 men there, and women potentially
for the raid,
who were all thought they were in danger. If they didn't think they were in danger, then they wouldn't have been in flak jackets with M5s and M4s and M16s or whatever type of fully automatic or semi-automatic weapons they had. And in fact, they told Mark that at the scene. He goes, "Why did you show up with all this force, man? My lawyer said we'd turn." And he goes, "We don't know what we're going to encounter." Which is completely false. Like they didn't know his name. They didn't know what he was charged with. Not once.
Priors?
Not once. Exactly. Not once. They get a picture from Google Map. I mean, it's not difficult in the neighborhood. They plot out the routes. They get the priors. And as Mark will tell you, if I was such a danger, why did the magistrate judge release me on my own recognizance? Like he figured out in minutes that I didn't even have to put up $1 as a bond, but you guys sent half the militia after me. So it was absurd, the statement. And we're going to get to the bottom of all this because, as you pointed out, we're just going to sue the federal government, as is our right. That is legal. And say, why did you do this? Why'd you do it in this way? You violated my civil rights.
One of the strange things that getting to know Mark and talking about all this, they treated him like he's David Koresh. He's out in the woods. He's got the compound. He doesn't own a gun.
No.
Mark doesn't even own a gun. And they can look that up. I mean, he doesn't even have a shotgun.
Correct. They can look up whether or not he's a registered handgun owner. Yep, but he doesn't even as he says, I'm the only guy in Pennsylvania that doesn't even own it.
Doesn't have a gun. There's a lot of guns in Pennsylvania.
Because hunting is big and
right. But yeah, that's just the irony of they went out there. The guy didn't even own a handgun. They can easily look that up.
But what I was saying was, you asked the question. In my 4 terms as DA, when there was a defense attorney, especially one known to me, and the person that penned this letter at my request was a former assistant U.S. attorney. So they knew who wrote this letter to the assistant U.S. attorney handling Mark's case. Said, in order to avoid any disruption for Mark's family, we will turn him in if you decide to charge. I never ignored that. Why would I use the resources of putting our SWAT team out there? Why would I do a high-risk arrest, which is what we call it? Why would I do a high-risk transport? Why would I waste the state police, Pennsylvania State Police, the troopers' time in doing this when the lawyer will just walk him into court, similar to what they did to Donald Trump, right?
Right.
And why? Why would they do that? if it wasn't politically motivated? We're going to find out.
Okay, let me back up. So right now, even liberals, even what Bruce Love did, getting in the way of Mark offering a free medical ultrasound to a woman who's clearly not going into the abortion facility, but going in here. And most pro-choice people are like, look, I'm not pro-life, but if pregnancy centers want to give free help to women who are seeking them out, I'm for that.
Well, that's pro-choice, right?
That's pro-choice.
You could choose life.
But on the DOJ front, their reputation's in the toilet with most of our country. So when I go around and I've met people and I say, yeah, we're suing the DOJ on behalf of Mark Houck, they're like, yes, awesome, go get him. But then you get the person that's like, I don't think you can sue the DOJ. So how's this work?
Two things that you bring up. One's philosophic. Great point. It doesn't have anything to do with Mark Houck. They could be like a pro-abort. They could be an abortionist.
Right.
And be like, I don't trust the DOJ either. The Federal Bureau of whatever, they put the I on like injustice or insurrection, they make fun of them on these movies, these TV shows. So yes, you're right. I believe that confidence, they call it, the confidence index in the FBI is at an all-time low. The second thing is that
internally and externally, I would say.
Right. And the second thing is what you're talking about is immunity, is sovereign immunity. And sovereign means king, and immunity means can't be sued. So the king is above the law is how they say it. So you can't sue King Charles, much as Robert would like to. And so you can't sue the king. The king is above the law. He makes the law. He's not subject to it. And we call that immunity. Congress people have congressional immunity for what they say on the floor. I had prosecutorial immunity for what I said in court, right? So I said a guy's guilty of murder and he was acquitted. It wasn't perjury. Yeah, right. The judge has absolute immunity for what he does in court, or she. And the government has limited their absolute sovereign immunity to what's called qualified immunity, and meaning that you can sue the government when they say they can sue you. And there are two general ways to do that in this case. One is the Federal Tort Claims Act, which says, not if we break a contract. You can't sue the government for that. You can sue them in contract, but you can't get damages. You just get your contract back. But if we commit an act against you, like punch you in the face, or let's say arrest you or prosecute you when we know we shouldn't, then you can sue us for a tort. So civil law has two things. Contract, you paint my house, you didn't show up to paint my house, you won't give me half my money back, so I sue you. Or tort, you punch me in the face, you get in a car wreck. That's an injury to property or person. So this is a civil rights claim, is the second so-called 1983 action, 42 U.S.C. 1983 and 1985, which is, and you violated my civil rights. So those statutes say, hey, if we violated your civil rights, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Eighth Amendment, Double Jeopardy, 14th Amendment, Equal Protection Clause, you can sue us. And then there are limitations on those damages. It's not easy to do, but you can sue City Hall. You may not be able to win against City Hall, but you can sue. And so yes, you can sue the king. Yes, you can sue the federal government. Yes, you can sue state and local governments, but only to the extent that you do two things. One, give them notice, and two, have a cause of action in law that says, and we do, the so-called civil rights under color of authority. So these guys were wearing badges and had guns, and they were acting under color of authority, and we believe violated Mark's civil rights by this unlawful arrest, this unlawful prosecution.
And this is a strong case because of the fact that he was trying to turn himself in, the fact that they raided his house, the fact that
the facts are good.
The facts are good.
But as those people said, I didn't know you could sue that. It's never a strong case because you're only suing under the rubric that they gave you.
Right.
So it's a strong case, but a tough case. They're all, and you see these people, I mean, sometimes they go into the wrong house and shoot the wrong person.
Right.
And you're going to win those, right? I mean, you had to make sure that if you were going to pull the trigger, you were at the right house. But they were at the right house. They were serving a warrant. But there are great facts, where she's like, where's the warrant? And he goes, we're taking him with or without a warrant.
The wife said, do you have a warrant? And he said, we're taking him with or without a warrant.
He had a warrant. He was just being a jerk.
Right.
And then she says, well, they call that armed kidnapping. And he's like, fine, and whips out the warrant. I mean, we did them right.
But those other agents, and we have this audio too, they're just sitting here going, this is bad.
Why don't we just knock on the door and hand him the warrant? Why don't
Like,
we let
why
him
are
get
we
some
here?
pants on?
And the 3-year-old screaming.
So then they claim they didn't know. You know, lies hurt in life. You're like, how many times have we heard that? But Planned Parenthood's lying to me. But lies are great in court because I can prove they're lies. And the jury's like, that's what happened to my nephew.
That's what happened to my nephew.
You see him,
Right.
didn't give my nephew a warrant either. You've heard it, right? I've seen it on the
Right.
jury. I don't know how many trials I've had, thousands. And I tell you, when they lean forward a little bit and start nodding their head and looking at the other guy and looking at the FBI agent and the special agent chart, he didn't even look into it. He's trying to make us believe he didn't even look into it. They didn't know. They just like set out that day and the radio, they're like, you guys just start driving in circles bigger and bigger and we'll tell you when you get near Mark Houck. That's absurd. Nobody's going to believe it. Nobody's going to believe that they didn't know what they were doing. And we're going to find out. Maybe it's true. Maybe they are just completely ignorant and negligent and wake up in the morning and just decide what to do in their quiet cubicle and like, let's go arrest Mark Houck. Maybe they did, but probably getting a target letter 5 days after he was acquitted in Philadelphia, probably being arrested and ignoring our letter and multiple phone calls to the U.S. Attorney's Office, probably sending a SWAT team to what the magistrate released him without a bond. You know, I was in the United States Marshal Service Pretrial Services Division in Eastern District of Alexandria, and that's what my job was, to do Bail Reform Act. Are they a danger to themselves or others, and they are a flight risk? Well, the magistrate determined neither. So why do you send the SWAT team out?
Yeah.
Or whatever y'all call it.
But that's a tough thing.
QRT. And he was chained to a desk for hours without ever being talked to.
Yeah, he was in gym shorts, his flip-flops, and a T-shirt. And they chained him to the table like he's Richard Kimball from The Fugitive.
They chained him.
Who was also innocent.
But you think of doing something for an hour, or like you're going to your movie with your kids and it's like an hour and 45 minutes and you really don't like it. And you're wondering like, can I last an hour? Make that, double that, 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours.
6 hours.
Nobody talking to you. That's when people won't tell you and your family's alone, your 7 children and your wife.
I think that was the hell part of his story, amidst everything else, as terrifying as it was for his kids to, be screaming and don't take my dad and see all the guns and all this and the shouting of the FBI agents. But once you're alone and it's quiet, that's almost worse than all the noise when you're in a situation like that.
And I always look at it from the other side. They're going to say we can arrest who we want, when we want, how we want, and using the process we want. You don't tell us, Mr. Defense Attorney, what our job is. You're no longer DA. We'll see. Because we have equal protection clause, right? The law is, that's why I keep, in the beginning when I was saying this.
Here's the reason too, is that I think one of the problems, if I was the FBI, the concern I would have is there's too many leaks in the ship. And when you start getting into discovery and you're like, who ordered this and why'd they do it? And there's just been plenty of whistleblowers who say the whole thing's politically motivated. They're targeting people. We've had documents released where they're targeting Catholics, certainly targeting pro-lifers in this case. And that's tough. That to me will come out. Is somebody's like,
I don't think they even know the firestorm. Now, I don't know if the judge is going to let them, but I don't think I'm revealing anything about strategy here. I mean, this is typical. I'd like to know who else across the country. It's the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Why wouldn't the judge order them to tell us how they handle all of these and whether they're in accord? Because the equal application of law is just as important as the application of law. You know how I know that? It's in the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, the Equal Protection Clause. So if you have free speech and I have free speech, but only I get it, that's a denial of your rights. And that's no First Amendment. That's why I keep telling y'all, and now you know what I mean, which not that you didn't in the beginning, but now it's been slapped down and arrested and almost went to jail for a decade, which is, it isn't the First Amendment. It isn't the Second Amendment or even the Fourth, Fifth Amendments. It's the 14th Amendment, because we have no right to speech at all if it's only applied to a certain group. And that is why so many judges have said that about the free speech. If obnoxious speech isn't protected, none is.
Right.
So if you're not protected, then there is no freedom of speech. And that's called content-based speech. And the government just doesn't get to decide whether, because obviously the pro-abortionists think that our speech is obnoxious. And I'm here to say, I'm on the pro-life side, praise be to God, and I think their speech is obnoxious because they're trying to kill little kids.
We had the nut out in South Carolina where we're also suing. But we had the crazy guy that created the aborted baby blended drink, like a smoothie. Okay. And it's like he's drew the cartoon and there's blood and he's like, oh, it's so good. And it's satanic when you look at it on one hand.
Right.
And it's just dumb on the other. Like this is what Cecile Richards built as CEO for 14 years at Planned Parenthood and all of that, and women's rights and access to health care and all of that. Now we just have the homemade sign and he had the rainbow flag mask. When we put that on social media, people thought we made it up to make their side look bad.
Right.
And we're like, no, this is an actual guy who goes out to the 40 Days for Life and harasses us. But
they do that.
But we're defending his free speech. That's what they don't understand.
Well, we're defending it passively by not making things up. I mean, as Christians, we hold the fullness of the truth, right? So we have to be peddlers of the truth. Only the truth. We can't, and that's why we have to admit when we're wrong too, and we do that. But they do make stuff up, and they do send people out to look like pro-lifers that aren't pro-lifers. As you know, I can't reveal all details, but they're sending in to pro-life doctors. They're sending in plants into their offices and attacking their licensure, and we're handling a lot of different cases through the Institute of Law and Justice. It's not just Mark Halk. We talk about him because he's in the news and he's getting texts from Bishop Strickland and like, we're praying for you, right? So he's in the news. But there are a lot of people who aren't. There are a lot of heroes in the world. There are a lot of people who are practicing heroic virtue and heroic justice, and you don't hear about them. And that's holy, right? That's holy when you act as though you're standing up on the mountaintop, but you're seen as though you're hiding in the shadows. That's where your reward is going to come, and that's why we do it. And they don't have that. They don't have a mission. And so they are, and that, as outrageous as that is, let me tell you, let's take it to something else. So if you have in fact, you must have a rainbow flag on your uniform in some of the major league teams, I think all of them but one, or else you get benched without pay. But if you put a little baby on there and say, I'm pro-life, then they bench you or cancel you. We put an ad for the Institute of Law and Justice, which was very successful until they canceled us. And it didn't say anything other than if you would like to use your skills on behalf of the unborn. They canceled us. They said we were against their community values. We then asked what values. They said they couldn't tell us for privacy reasons. So we said, can we have our $68 back? And they said no.
I shouldn't be laughing, but what are those values?
So it's not just the pro-life movement. It's everywhere. So if you're saying, but we're not doing that.
Right.
We're saying if this nut wants to come out with a baby in a blender, as horrific as that is, that's what I said. If obnoxious speech isn't protected, no speech is protected, because otherwise the government gets to decide what's obnoxious. And right now, even though 90% of people are pro-life in some measure, want some significant restriction on abortion, and more than 50% don't want abortion at all, even though that's true in America, if you say it, as Justice Alito said, you have to whisper your opinions in the hallways of your own home for fear of losing employment, education, friendship, and even family.
Mm-hmm. That was in his gay marriage dissent. Great quote.
Yep, Oberfell.
Okay, real quick. Let's we need good lawyers, and you found some. So give us a little overview. We start this institute, and people just came to us and said, I want to help.
As you know, because you were the one that did it, the board said, yep, let's do the Institute of Law and Justice last year. Let's roll it out in 2024. And then the weaponization of government came, praise be to God, the overturning of Roe v. Wade by the Dobbs decision on June 24th. But the battle lines then began drawn. We got almost one law enforcement contact a day during the Lent campaign. And you said, hey, Matt, can you accelerate this thing? And so we broadened our reach. And I've got hundreds of people applied just to show you, many from the government saying, I'm sick of, okay.
A lot of DOJ attorneys.
So many from LinkedIn. We got some from you
before we got
banned.
Before they banned us.
I just want to say, we know a lot of people. And the first, so first of all, we always
like a trinity of areas too.
Yeah, let me just say that. So the first thing we needed to do in America was to end Roe v. Wade. Okay, and there's two parts of 1A. 1A and Roe v. Wade. And 1B is to ban abortion, whether that's through a personhood amendment or a federal law that says that you can't kill babies in the womb, no matter what, whether or not that's the case. The second thing is overturning these buffer zones, right? And number one is the most important. Whether buffer zones or abortion pills are more important, I don't know.
Right.
But I would say abortion pills. But number two on this list is buffer zones. And these are these zones of silence for us, just for me and you. You can go out and do whatever you want. You can sell that pen, or this is fantastic coffee, or whatever you want.
You can support abortion.
You can even support abortion, but you can't
be
talk
pro-life.
about the pro-life. So this is called content-based speech, and some elected person that you never heard of in New York gets to decide what you can say. Okay, so that's wrong, and it's un-American. And we saw it when Isabel got arrested for not even, because the manifestation of that is you can't even be there. And that's what they did with Isabel Spruce Vaughn in Birmingham and another dude in England. And so that's the manifestation. Why socialists don't visit Cuba and Venezuela and communist countries to see the manifestation, I don't know. I asked them to do it. I said, well, why don't you go to one of these countries and see? Okay. And then the third thing is non-medical, pharmaceutical abortions. Because, in Alabama, praise be to God, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, they banned abortion. So you're 17 years old and you just call Hawaii. You get on a telemed appointment, and can they mail in Biden apparently did some letter or executive order, I'm not sure we're getting to the bottom of it, that said, yeah, the Postal Service can keep delivering abortion pills from a pro-abort state to a pro-life state. Well, that doesn't mean it's legal. There's a pilot program for medical abortion. 54%, I think I'm correct, today as we stand here, it just went up 1%. 54% of all abortions in the United States of America, which is 1 million a year, 54% are done by pills. There's 2 pills. And that's
the majority of those are not mail-in though. Now we're probably headed to that, but right now.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Did I say by mail-in?
No.
You
didn't. You didn't. I just want to clarify that most of them, it's still Planned Parenthood, especially, is heavily relying on brick and mortar. Still, they're probably gonna transition out of that with the mail order. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of laws that states are passing where you can't mail pills in, you can't
Florida
mail them out. Yeah, just where you can't mail heroin into a state. So
I mean, and they don't even have a license to practice law.
Right.
The doctor in Illinois, there's now a website showing you how to fake a PO box in the pro-abort state and somehow put mail forwarding. I mean, this is not a how to.
They're not the mail order abortion. I think most pro-life people think there's like 1 million a day, like it's over because of mail order. And
no,
they're not in high demand.
Over.
It's like a pilot program, and you can have state laws to stop it. But what's happening is, as surgical abortions are more regulated in all these states, the chemical abortions are going through the roof. And that's the 54%.
Nothing's over, ever. Against the gates of hell.
But I do all these interviews and people are like, mail order abortion.
That's what the
devil
devil
wants. How are you going to fight that?
But that's what the devil wants. Just lay down the sword, give up, mediocrity, lukewarmness. It's all condemned in the Bible. No, we have to stay strong and faithful. Look, I'm a lawyer and we're fighting, but it's a spiritual battle. We're going to win. We're going to win, and we're going to win on our knees, not in the courts, but we need to fight. So, I mean, don't give up. That nothing's over ever. Good people are taking back. We won. I mean,
Roe v. Wade.
Roe
It's
v.
great.
God, I mean, let's not. It's like we won't accept yes.
We won't.
That's why we're doing the Institute
we
of Law
don't
and
know how
Justice.
to win. Yeah, it's so.
That's why I say we're going from whining to winning.
Yes.
Let's just win.
Yes.
Let's just go in and hold the truth. And sometimes we're going to lose. And sometimes we're going to be persecuted, which I think that's a promise, right?
I think so.
Okay, it's not. It's you will be.
Yeah.
Persecuted in my name, not might be. You always say that, and it's right. But the manifestation of this third thing, of the triumvirate of hatred, this abortion. What's
that? What's that? The LinkedIn?
You love it. You love it.
Was that the LinkedIn ad? Help us fight the triumvirate of hatred.
It may have
apply
said
here.
It may
that is against our values here at LinkedIn. What are your values? Shut up. We can't tell you.
That's right. Can I have my money back?
I've never heard that. Okay, the triumvirate of hatred. Keep
anyway.
going.
Yeah, it's on our official website.
Right.
Anyway, the triumvirate of hatred that women are privileged to kill their own children in their own womb, which was supposed to be a pretty safe place, that people can't talk about not killing your baby in your womb and saying, but I love you and your baby and I'll help you. Can't say that. And that if we ban the doctors from doing it or we can't find any doctors, we'll just give you a deadly poison and kill your baby. And we can, by the way, send it through the mail. We're not really sure
FedEx it to you.
if your little sister's going to pick it up. And
Right.
actually, we don't know who's
Leave it
actually
on the
gonna get
doorstep.
whatever. So this triumvirate of hatred, especially that third one, has an evil manifestation because they say, and Vermont's doing this, we really may not be able to ban, to force abortion into certain states. We may not be able to send this pill to Texas. So what we'll do is we'll say, if you're a medical or healthcare provider and you talk against abortion pills, we'll revoke your license. And these are important. They're pulling your livelihood. They're saying if you're a doctor and if you're at a 40 Days for Life campaign and you hold up a sign that says abortion pill reversal, which is just a hormone, as I understand it from
it's completely.
They prescribe it for 37 other conditions to preserve the life of the baby. But if you want to do abortion pill reversal, which means you take pill 1, then you take abortion pill reversal, which is like progesterone or estrogen or both, and it reverses it 65% of the time without harm to the mother or baby, you can't talk about that. Not or you'll go to jail. Not or we'll raid your house like Mark Houck. We'll just take away your license.
Which means medicine's no longer market driven. Like if
Government,
five cardiologists tell you need heart surgery and one guy says, no, you don't, you're fine. You're like, I don't know. I just had a heart attack. I'm really overweight. I feel bad. No, you're fine. Then you just don't go to that one doctor.
And let me tell you why.
And it's a market correction.
And let me tell you why you need lawyers. Because, lawyers
always say
they're
that
the tip
sentence.
of the spear. Right. Exactly. No, that they say why you need to pay lawyers.
Okay.
I'm telling you why you need them, because we're pro bono. We live off the good graces and largesse of our donors. Because you said, which is now it's no longer market driven. Well, what if I said, so what? That's what I want. The Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution says that the government cannot interfere with interstate commerce. That's why governments only build roads and license plates, because they're the only ones.
I didn't even think about the Commerce
That's
Clause
what
when
I'm
it comes to
saying.
this. Yeah.
Because lawyers can answer the so what. It's illegal for the government to drive medical commerce through the unholy revocation or threatening.
The license.
Because a lot of this is just threatening, right?
Right.
And we do quake. We do quake.
It works.
It's like the Sanhedrin coming in and saying to the head of the temple, who doesn't want to kill Jesus, you don't want to lose what you have. You have a nice job. That's right. We all live in that fear. We don't want to lose our jobs. We don't want to lose funding. We don't want the government to pull our 501c3.
Right.
We don't want to go down it, right? But the real thing is we need great lawyers who really understand the scope and the process, who can figure this out and say, okay, Carney's saying that the government is now directing the market. I need to find out, and when it's not illegal, we shouldn't file a frivolous lawsuit. We should go to Congress and say, let's make it illegal or whatever, right? We hold the truth. That's what I meant. We shouldn't be making up facts.
As we wrap up, you want to give a quick summary of each of the attorneys that we have so far?
So the first guy we have is Tomislav Kunovic. Great trial lawyer. He's a Croatian heritage German, multilingual guy, practiced law in Spain and speaks fluent Spanish and German and English and Croatian. An incredible guy. And he has won 3 buffer zone cases in the EU. He's won them. He's taken them to trial and he won them. And one of them was in front of a 3-judge panel,
right, of
women. The meaning that women, you can't say, oh, they're just a bunch of men telling women what to do. Okay. He was the first, and he's also our executive director of international. The second person we brought on was one of the original lawyers on Colorado v. Hill, which is unfortunately the last United States constitutional Supreme Court buffer zone, 8 feet around a woman if you want 8 feet.
Yeah, and he worked on that.
He did. David Wagner
worked against it.
David Wagner, and he's a former professor of law at Regent University. The next person, and this is in no particular order because these folks are coming to us, is Donato Barrio, and he's on board. He's a medical doctor. He has given up he was also a lawyer and given up his practice of law. He's going to part-time practice medicine. And frankly, he's one of the leading pharmaceutical and medical experts, and he will lead the charge regarding mail-in abortions, pharmaceutical abortions, abortion pill reversal, all this stuff. Are people actually, that little pamphlet you get in the Tylenol that you throw away and have never read in your life?
Right.
Well, an abortion pill, you might want to read that.
Right.
Is that content, all that stuff? We're going to handle it. Fantastic guy, great pro-lifer, and is involved in directly in 40 Days for Life. Another fellow that's coming on is a man named Dwight Artis, a lovely guy with a lovely family, and he hails from the DOJ.
Yes.
He's an expert in the Department of Justice, and an expert in federal civil and law.
He came down to the symposium and was like, I'm in.
With his family. Yep. Heard Mark Houck's case and everything. The next person that we have, very similar background to me. Elected prosecutor, state elected prosecutor in the great state of Missouri, where I went to law school. And she's also been an appointed city attorney, and she's been elected in multiple jurisdictions and appointed in multiple jurisdictions, has had her own law firm and her own practice, and is very dedicated to life and is going to bring what is so necessary, which is locality law. Hey, you need a permit for that. You can't stand on that street. You need a sound permit, an elevated stage permit, a blah, blah, blah. This is what she did, just like I did for 15 years from the county attorney, city attorney perspective. Her name is April Wilson, and we're so happy to have her joining us in the next month. And then finally, on the corporate and compliance side, also have a Texan, great Texan, Melissa Simpson joining us, and she will be handling with my oversight, that role of compliance and making sure that we are following, because we're lawful, right? We are registered to raise money in all the jurisdictions that require it. We follow the law. We file our 990s and we do our audits and all that stuff. And she was a former litigator, which I love, which now got into compliance. And so
we have a lot of litigators.
Yeah,
I mean, but that's so important because
we have trial dogs. That's
we have
what
trial
we do.
dogs, and we need them. But people watch A Few Good Men or Law and Order, and they think all lawyers do that, but very few do. Most lawyers wet their pants when they go into a courtroom.
Do you remember the Demi Moore character?
Yeah.
No, we don't. We don't need that. We need
She's not good at that
is
movie
the colonel's underwear a matter of national?
Right.
We need that guy.
Yeah,
we need the guy going up there.
Is the colonel's underwear a matter of national
You'd
security?
say, I mean, we need the guy going. No, special agent. I'm asking you a question. You're special, aren't you? You should know the name of it. Did you or did you not say that you had no idea who Mark Houck was when you went to his house with a SWAT team? That's why you did it. So tell me, you have no idea? You had no idea. You didn't look him up. You didn't look his record up. He could have been 4 feet tall or disabled. He could have been 100 feet tall. You had no idea. Is that what you do every day? That's the level you. Well, I didn't have no idea. Well, was that said? Yes, that was said. So you were lying. And now you want the jury to believe. We need people who know how to get to the truth and not let. And if he's not, then I'm not going to make something out of it, right?
Right.
If he's not, he's not. If we're like, hey, this guy was not that guy. That was not said. Those, and we'll get to the bottom of it. That's how you get to the truth. That's why I said lying hurts in real life, but it's great in court because I can prove it.
It is. And it's very exciting. People can go. I know we've put the lawyers on the screen, but if you go to 40daysforlife.com/institute, you can see that. You also will put a link to this podcast on there so you can share it and check it out.
And pray for us, even though we're lawyers.
Yeah.
Pray for us. I mean, it's in battle. It's the modern day battle, right?
It is. And we have to protect our mission. And because of what you're doing on the sidewalks, because 40 Days for Life has been so effective and because we've grown, that's why we need this. That's the end result, is that it's effective. So they're targeting us and we have to fight back, and we're doing it. And that is going to save more babies and close more abortion facilities. So thank you, Matt. You'll hear a lot more on this. Obviously, a lot coming with the lawsuit with the DOJ, with 40 Days for Life starting, with all the things that we have going on. So be sure to go to 40daysforlife.com, check out everything. Please rate, review, and share this podcast, as we covered a lot, and it can bring a lot of awareness, whether people agree with us on abortion or not. They need to know that these issues are going on in regards to free speech and so forth. So thank you for joining. Thank you, Matt. And we will see you next time. God bless you.